So I got rid of my candle collection years ago after I learned how toxic it can be to burn a paraffin candle in your home. It can really decrease your indoor air quality and can release all sorts of nasty chemicals in the air, including some that are known to cause cancer. However, I really like the ambiance that a candle brings in the winter, especially on our cold, long Wyoming winter nights. So I've since learned how to make homemade soy candles, which won't release junk into your air and still give you that cozy glow of a burning candle. So there are a couple different options that you have in making a homemade candle. You can use soy wax, which is what I'm using today, or you can try beeswax or even tallow that might come from your local butcher, or if you render tallow yourself. Now, in addition to your wax, you're also going to need some Wicks, and I just grabbed some off of Amazon. I made sure I got the all natural ones, so I wouldn't have any risk of having any metals like zinc or lead in them. You'll also need a container of some sort. I usually use little mason jars in the pint or half-pint sizes just because they're readily available and they hold up well to heat. Now you'll also need a heat source. So a slow cooker is an easy way to do this. It just takes a little bit longer because the slow cooker takes longer to heat up. So if you're in more of a hurry, you can just use a small saucepan on your stovetop instead. The result will be the same, it's just how long you want it to take. And then lastly, if you want a scented candle, you use some sort of fragrance oil or essential oils. And I'll talk about this more in a minute, but I use essential oils. They aren't going to give you as strong of a scent in your candle as you're used to maybe from the candles that you buy at the store, but they're natural, and I know they don't contain any of the questionable ingredients that you might find in a fragrance oil. So the first thing we're going to do is fill up our jars with soy wax or beeswax or whatever type of wax you're using. Now, since this is going to melt down quite a bit as it heats, fill it up all the way to the top because it will shrink considerably. And now we're just gonna put the jars in our heat source, whether that is a saucepan on the stove or a crock pot. No matter what you use, just make sure it's filled with a few inches of water so it doesn't crack the jars as it heats. I usually set my burner to medium-high, although if I'm using a crock pot, I put it on all the way to high because it does take a little while for the wax to start melting. So as it begins to melt down, just give it a little stir with a knife or a little dowel, and then as the wax sinks into the jar, refill it until it is completely melted and at the level you want. So once the candle wax is completely melted, carefully remove it from the heat and let the jars cool for about 5 minutes. Okay, here's the deal. I get a lot of emails from people wanting to know if they can use essential oils in their homemade candles, but I'm here to tell you today that essential oils are not the most perfect candle scent in the world. They're natural and they don't have junk, but they just aren't gonna give you that super strong scent that you would expect from a store-bought candle. So here's what I usually do instead. I'll add a little bit of essential oil to my candle just to give it a faint aroma, and then if I really want my house to smell more strongly of a scent or to help cover up an odor, then I just use my essential oil diffuser. It's way more effective, it's stronger, and I don't have to worry about putting 100 drops of an essential oil in a candle and then not being able to really smell it anyway. I found with a jar of this size, which is a half-pint, I need about 80 drops of essential oil to get a light scent, which is a lot. So like I said, if you don't want to use that much essential oil in a candle, you can simply just omit any sort of scent and use your essential oils for something else. Now, the sky is the limit with combinations, and I'm going to give you a list of combinations of possible scents in the blog post that goes with this video, and I'll post the link to that in the show notes below. So now, the tricky part, which really isn't that tricky, but you need to get the wicks into the candle wax, and the most important thing is that they stand straight up in the middle. Now, the reason this is important is if they lean to the side, you will have a candle that burns unevenly and it may not want to even stay lit. So how I do this is I will set the wick right in the jar, and then I'm gonna use some household items to prop it up. So sometimes I use pencils, sometimes I use tape, sometimes I use little dowels. It really doesn't matter what you use as long as it keeps the wick in the middle of the jar. And now all that's left is just to wait for the wax to set up, then you can trim the wick and light it right away. And that's how you can make easy homemade candles in an afternoon or less. So for more homestead tips, recipes, and homemade living tutorials, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you're notified when we post a new video every week. Thanks for watching, guys.